When Barron Trump donates his MAGA hat to a charity auction, the event takes an unexpected turn. As bids climb to astonishing heights, the underlying motivation behind this frenzy becomes a story in itself. The reason for the intense interest in this seemingly ordinary item proves to be anything but ordinary. The charity shop was quiet when Barron Trump entered, his tall frame slightly stooped. Mary, the shopkeeper, looked up from her crossword puzzle, eyes widening as she recognized him. Barron approached the counter, a MAGA hat in his hands. "I'd like to donate this," he said softly. Mary hesitated, her fingers drumming on the counter. The hat represented years of division in their town. "I'm not sure we can accept that," she began. "I understand," Barron replied, his gaze earnest. "But I believe this hat can do more good here than in my closet. It's about helping people who need it." As he spoke, Mary's expression softened. She listened to his explanation of wanting to make a difference, to bridge divides. His words were thoughtful, lacking the brashness often associated with his family name. "You know," Mary said, a small smile forming, "I think you might be on to something." She took the hat, placing it carefully on the shelf behind her. Word of Barron's donation spread through the town quickly. At the diner, over fences, and in the grocery store, people whispered and wondered. Some were skeptical, others intrigued, but all were talking. The MAGA hat found its place among mismatched teacups and well-loved books. Mary couldn't help but glance at it throughout the day, marveling at its potential impact. As evening fell, Mary taped a bright yellow flyer to the shop window. "Charity auction this Saturday," it proclaimed. She stepped back, studying the announcement, and felt a flutter of anticipation. Something told her this wasn't going to be an ordinary event. The MAGA hat was about to take on a new meaning, and Mary couldn't wait to see what would unfold. The community center buzzed with an energy usually reserved for high-stakes poker games. Locals shifted in their seats, eyeing each other nervously. Little did they know, the real players weren't even in the room yet. What would happen when a small-town auction collided with big city money? The auctioneer's gavel cracked against the podium, silencing the murmurs, all eyes fixed on the weathered MAGA hat perched on a simple wooden stand. "Ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer's voice boomed, "we'll start the bidding at $100. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. $100 for a used baseball cap? For a moment, the room was still. Then, slowly, hesitantly, a hand went up. "100, called out Mrs. Peterson, the town librarian. Another hand shot up. "150, countered Joe from the hardware store. The auctioneer's eyes darted between them, his voice rising with excitement. As the bids climbed past $200, a mix of emotions played across faces in the audience. Some looked shocked, others intrigued. A few wore expressions of barely concealed disapproval. But there was something else, too. A growing sense that they were witnessing something extraordinary. Suddenly, a phone on the auction table rang. The auctioneer's assistant answered, nodding furiously. $500, he announced. The room erupted in whispers. Who was bidding from afar? And why were they willing to pay so much? More phones began to ring. The auctioneer struggled to keep up as bids flew in from unseen participants. $750, $800, $1,000. The locals watched in awe as the price soared beyond anything they'd imagined. The energy in the room shifted. This was no longer just a quirky local event. They were part of something bigger, something that was capturing attention far beyond their small town. People who had come out of curiosity now leaned forward in their seats, caught up in the excitement. $2,000, $2,500, $3,000. The auctioneer's voice grew hoarse as he rattled off the escalating bids. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He'd never seen anything like this in all his years of running small-town auctions. As the bidding passed $5,000, a hush fell over the room. The locals exchanged glances of disbelief. A used hat, no matter its previous owner, selling for thousands. It seemed impossible. Yet the auctioneer's gavel kept falling, and the price kept climbing. Something extraordinary was unfolding before their eyes. And no one could quite believe what they were witnessing. $5,000 for a used hat seemed outrageous. But it was pocket change compared to what came next. The quiet murmurs in the room were suddenly drowned out by the roar of an engine outside. Who was about to crash this humble charity auction, and how high were they willing to go? A sleek, silver Aston Martin screeched to a halt in front of the community center. The driver's door swung open, revealing a man in an impeccably tailored suit, one hand pressed to his ear as he barked into a phone. "I don't care what it costs. I want that hat!" Inside, the energy shifted as three distinct figures made their presence known. The tech billionaire, Ethan Zhao, CEO of a social media giant, raised his paddle with a casual flick of his wrist. 50,000, he called out, his voice steady and confident. The room fell silent, stunned by the astronomical jump in price. Ethan's eyes gleamed with a mixture of amusement and determination. He saw the hat not just as a piece of political memorabilia, but as a potential centerpiece for his vast collection of controversial artifacts. To him, it represented a pivotal moment in digital culture, a symbol of how social media had shaped modern politics. Before the auctioneer could recover, another voice cut through the silence. 100,000! Snapped Samantha Reeves, a rising star in the opposition party. Her aggressive bidding style raised eyebrows and set tongues wagging. Was this a publicity stunt? A way to make a statement about reclaiming symbols? Samantha's jaw was set, her gaze fierce. She envisioned campaign ads featuring the hat, turning it into a symbol of change and unity. In her mind, winning this auction was about more than money. It was about shaping a narrative. As the two power players traded increasingly extravagant bids, a third contender emerged. Linda Chen, representing a well-known philanthropist, calmly countered each offer. Her serene demeanor contrasted sharply with the tension in the room. Linda's plan was perhaps the most ambitious of all. The philanthropist she represented intended to use the hat as the centerpiece of a traveling exhibition on political symbolism and the power of open dialogue. The proceeds from the exhibit would fund programs promoting civil discourse and community engagement across the country. The locals watched in awe as the battle unfolded, the price climbing to heights they'd never imagined. What had started as a simple charity auction had become a clash of titans, each bidder seeing in that worn red cap a reflection of their own ambitions and ideals. Just when it seemed the auction couldn't get any more intense, a voice from the back of the room stopped everyone in their tracks. $10 million, it said calmly. Who would make such an outrageous bid? And why? The auctioneer's voice cracked as he repeated the astronomical sum. $10 million, ladies and gentlemen. Do I hear 10,000,001? The room fell silent, every head turning to catch a glimpse of the mysterious bidder. A figure stepped forward, their face obscured by the brim of a worn baseball cap. The crowd held its collective breath as the winner approached the podium. Even Ethan Zhao, Samantha Reeves, and Linda Chen, who had been locked in a fierce bidding war moments ago, watched with rapt attention. As the winner reached for the microphone, they slowly removed their hat. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience as they recognized the face of Dr. Emily Thornton, a renowned civil rights activist and former critic of the Trump administration. Dr. Thornton's eyes scanned the room, taking in the shocked expressions. "I know many of you are wondering why I'm here," she began, her voice steady. "Why would someone like me bid on this hat?" She paused, her gaze falling on the worn MAGA cap. "This hat has been a symbol of division for too long. But today, we have the opportunity to change that narrative, to turn it into a symbol of growth, understanding, and unity." The room hung on her every word as Dr. Thornton shared her own journey of transformation. She spoke of heated debates, misunderstandings, and eventually moments of genuine connection with those she once viewed as adversaries. "This hat," she said, holding it up for all to see, "will be the centerpiece of a new museum dedicated to fostering dialogue and bridging divides in our country. The $10 million? That's going straight to charities working to address the root causes of inequality and discrimination." As Dr. Thornton finished speaking, the tension in the room gave way to a sense of awe. The MAGA hat, once a lightning rod for controversy, had become a catalyst for an unexpected moment of unity and reflection. The MAGA hat, once a symbol of division, became a bridge for understanding as Dr. Emily Thornton's words echoed through the stunned silence. She shared a poignant story of her own transformation, recounting a chance encounter with a Trump supporter at a local diner. Their conversation, initially tense, evolved into a profound exchange of ideas and experiences. Dr. Thornton's voice trembled as she described how this interaction challenged her preconceptions and opened her eyes to the complexity of human beliefs. As Dr. Thornton spoke, all eyes in the room sought out Barron Trump. The young man's face remained composed, but his eyes betrayed a mix of emotions. A subtle smile played at the corners of his mouth, and he nodded almost imperceptibly as Dr. Thornton described her plans for the hat. It was clear that this outcome had exceeded even his hopes for the donation. The atmosphere in the community center shifted palpably. The initial tension melted away, replaced by a shared sense of possibility. Dr. Thornton's message of unity resonated deeply, reminding everyone present that change often begins with small, personal acts of openness and empathy. Inspired by Dr. Thornton's candor, audience members began to share their own stories. An elderly woman stood up, her voice shaky but determined, and recounted how her granddaughter's coming out had challenged her long-held beliefs. A middle-aged man followed, describing how volunteering at a local shelter had transformed his views on poverty and social responsibility. As more people spoke, the MAGA hat on the podium seemed to take on a new significance. No longer just a political symbol, it became a catalyst for connection and honest dialogue. The simple act of listening to one another without judgment created a palpable sense of community in the room. By the auction's end, the atmosphere was electric with possibility. People who had entered as strangers now exchanged contact information, eager to continue the conversations that had begun. The MAGA hat, once a flashpoint for controversy, had become an unexpected instrument of healing, reminding everyone present of the power of open minds and open hearts. The auction's aftermath brought unexpected changes to the small town. Neighbors who once avoided each other now exchanged warm greetings on the streets. The community center transformed into a place for open dialogue where people listened more and judged less. In the local museum, the worn MAGA hat stood as a silent testament to the power of empathy. Visitors from across the country came to see it, each leaving with a challenge etched in their minds. To reconsider their own biases and judgments, Barron Trump's donation had ignited a spark that few could have predicted. The simple act of giving away a hat had set in motion a series of events that touched hearts and changed minds. As the story spread, it became a catalyst for others seeking to bridge divides in their own communities, proving that even small gestures could lead to profound transformations.